recording. So once you add, like I have added as a owner to another subscription, that's why I'm able to get this particular Microsoft invite. And once you click, right, it would actually go and authenticate you as an I mean, it would actually create a default directory what with the details which I have logged in right already, girish_kalamet@hotmail.com. It will actually would create a default directory in this particular subscription, the other guy's subscription. Okay, so once you are part of you are a user of a default directory, then you will have access to a subscription. Okay, so that's what happened, and I have access to this particular guy's subscription. Okay, Pradeep Sastry, this one. Okay, so let's give a try. I'll just go to this. I'll try to add. Let me change Maddie to contributor to. Let me try to change his role to. So this is permissions. Let me add. You can access this particular email right now, Maddie. Maddie.john13.
Girish, I can access.
You can write. We gave a contributor access yesterday, right?
Yeah.
So if I give owner, this would work perfectly. Okay, I'll just give you as a reader access, and let me know. We'll be going out to the session. Let me know if you are able to. So it would automatically send up invitation to you to your this particular mail ID. Okay, just check that and let me know whether you are able to get this particular notification, and then you're able to. I mean, you saw that default directory creation page, right? That should happen. Yeah, if that thing is happening, it would create a directory, and then you will be part of. It would create a directory in my account default directory if it's not there, and in that default directory you would be part of it. Okay. Okay. So something we are trying is like okay, let me welcome Hemant. Okay. Hi Hemant. Hemant. I think you're on mute. Okay, let him respond. If we'll be continuing. Okay, so so we were talking about a lot of Azure Active Directory scenarios and implementations, and how exactly Azure Active Directory works, each and every stuff. Okay, so we saw something called as, with a developer perspective, how you can implement or use Azure Active Directory PaaS services into your application. Okay, now we actually would go a little bit deeper on the authentication part of Azure Active Directory. Okay, where we will talk about something called as multi-factor authentication. Hemant, you able to hear us? Just I mean, like, speak out once your audible devices are working fine, microphones are working fine. So multi-factor authentication is nothing but you'll have certain kind of two-factor authentication or two levels of authentication in your system. So we talked about implementation of authentication to a web API or application. Okay, that was happening with a single token and with a single username and password. Okay, and that particular username and password were part of that particular user was part of Active Directory. But when there would be requirement of certain like banking applications or other very sensitive applications where you may require multi-factor authentication. Okay, like you can have certain application where you store your credit card details, where you would be interested to implement this kind of multi-factor authentication. Okay, and so what it do is like you will like before authenticating application, you typically give a password. You add as a trusted device, or you give a phone number so that you get a sign in, like you can get SMS to log into certain systems, or you provide certain biometrics. Like if you want to log into a banking application, you need to provide a biometrics which you would be seeing in very regular banks. So that is MFA. And so MFA scenarios are, it's actually can be applied for only cloud only apps, or and even also on on-premise applications as well. It just depends upon how much level of depth of security your application wanted or it needs. Okay, and it's a multi-factor MFA is a standalone service, and it comes with even premium kind of billing as well. Okay, but mostly it's this is billed according to the number of transactions or number of authentication it does, because when you select MFA, it actually triggers a SMS, so for which you would be charged. Okay, so it's basically transaction based, or the calls based, or number of authentication based charges. So if you want to understand more of MFA, so it would be like UI user, and you have configured, or your admin, Azure Active Directory admin, or me configured MFA for you guys. Okay, so when I do that, so basically what happens if I don't have MFA, I just I just add you an user to my Active Directory, then you will be having access to the subscription, my subscription, but you need to present a username and password. That was only sufficient. But when you implement MFA, then when the user would come, and when he tried to access portal.azure.com, he need to present username and password. Okay, once it's presented, your if I mean like your credentials, if they sits on your on-premise, or it's in here, this cases your credentials goes and sit in Azure AD itself. Okay, so Azure AD again, like contact services, which is no, with respect to MFA. Okay, so and then the Azure AD would redirect your call to Azure multi-factor auth APIs, the standalone APIs. Okay, so that would it would check out like what are the trusted devices you have added, whether you have added any mobile app. Okay, so basically for Azure, we use Azure Authenticator app, which is available both in iOS and Android as well. And or if you added a number, okay, so if you added a number, you will get a call, or you can get a SMS. Okay, so the call would be saying something. It would prompt you an OTP, and just prompt you OTP, or it would just say that this is a call from Microsoft where we are trying to whether you try to sign in to any of your services subscription or not. It will ask. Okay, if it's yes, you need to click one, and then it's done. Okay, so that's how. If it's SMS, you'll get an OTP, and then you will be prompted. A page will come while login, and you just enter the OTP, and you are done. That is MFA. So in case of Authenticator app, Azure Authenticator app, you'll get an access pop-up message saying that did you make the call to access your subscription? Once yes, you give a passcode, and then it's done. And that's how MFA works. So technical scenarios for Azure MFA would be, what are the kind of implementation which can be done for MFA. And as I said, that MFA can be implemented for on-premise server, and it also can be implemented for cloud. If your Active Directory is sitting in on-premise, okay, and you want to authenticate your on-premise app with Windows Server, that's also possible. Or if you want to implement MFA for your Azure AD application or Azure AD directory, yeah, that is also possible. You just need to have this MFA authentication server, or the single standalone service in between your on-premise apps and your Active Directories. So here you can see there's a multi-factor authentication server or service or standalone service, which is actually sitting behind your Windows Server AD and your on-premise app. And here also you can see, and for the cloud kind of applications also, cloud-based applications also, who are accessing for, I mean, like via cloud hosted. So for this particular cloud-based Active Directory also, we have something as multi-factor authentication service, which is available, which stands between you and your mobile devices or your cloud-based applications or your even on-premise applications. So we have hybrid implementation of this particular multi-factor authentication. Okay, and yeah, that's it. Like the billing plan is the same. Like it, if you have opted for premium Azure Active Directory, then it comes as a part of that particular suite as well. Okay, and you won't be charged per transaction based, or per call based, or per SMS triggered, per OTP based transactions on your billing. So we have something called as Active Directory Federation services also, like so that I will be discussing further. So basically, if I like setting up this multi-factor authentication would require a little bit of time. So what I did is like I have already performed the demo, and I have everything and captured as screenshots. So what you need to do is like for this. For implementing MFA, right, you need to have at least one user, or you can create a Active Directory user for this as well. Okay, or you can existing user, whatever you have, you can actually manage a multi-factor authentication or set up a multi-factor authentication for them as well, irrespective of whatever Hotmail ID or whatever, because these are the users and they are part of AD, so they are eligible to be configured with MFA. So one such a particular Active Directory user I have created is in my the Azure guy AD is Girish_Kalamati at this one .onmicrosoft.com. Okay, so once this user is a part of it, then once when I click manage multi-factor auth, actually they used to be a similar page in here, but now they have moved to different URL itself, account.activedirectory.windowsazure.com. Maybe it's growing up, that's why they have to not to load up portal, they would have done this. They have moved this particular complete multi-factor MFA page to different website itself. So whatever users you have, you can see that these all users are there as a part of Active Directory. You can enable multi-factor auth to any of them, or you can disable at any moment. Okay, so in cases like your like guy one is a part of organization right now, and tomorrow he's leaving the organization. Okay, so in that case, I want to stop his access. What I do is like at first I can disable his MFA here. Okay, one thing, and the other thing is like I can go and I can remove from the what are the groups or Active Directory he's part of it. Yeah, that's also possible. Okay, so once the like this particular page you get it, you can do bulk update as well. You can enable for all of the users underneath, but I want to show a demo for a single user, so I'll just enable this particular user, the Azure AD user. So once I'm done that, what I can do is like I'm a global I'm an admin for all of these users. Okay, so that's why I'm able to manage these users. Okay, but the same thing, the guy one actually is a user to it, but he's not an admin to this particular portal, so he will not be able to do this kind of settings, or even he can't configure the multi-factor authentication for other users. Okay, and only one thing he can do is like he can change his password sorry, he can change his password using self-service portal which you will come to know. So once you enable this particular user as an admin, I can do that. So once I do that, like I can give this particular URL to the users and say that just click this URL, you will be prompted, or you would be taken to a page where you can enable multi-factor auth. Okay, I mean you can give a phone number, you can register a mobile app, a lot of stuff you can do. Okay, once I've done that, once I click that, I'll get this particular pop-up page where it will say to log into your AD account or your subscription. So when you do that, like I have registered for this particular Azure AD user, right? user in this particular Active Directory, Azure Active Directory. So I'll give his credentials, everything, and it would prompt me saying that set it up now, because it's not set up for this particular user. It would show up, and you can sign out, and if it's not a particular email ID, you can access with different account as well. So once that is done, like, you can actually register, like, authenticate phone. So when you do that, you can give a number with the code, STD code, and then you can opt a method of text message, or you can opt a call me. Okay, and if it's office phone, it's a different auth itself, and if it's a mobile app, you will see that option. So I've opted for a text message. I'll get an OTP. I'll just verify it, and then I'll also get app password as well. Okay, so in certain cases, like Outlook and other Apple email, and even a few of MS Office, they would actually authenticate via Azure Authenticator, like that. So you'll get app password, which you can keep it. And then, so once you click done, your phone is also registered, and if you want to authenticate your app, you can configure them. Okay, and like, you will get this QR code. You need to download Azure Authenticator app. Okay, once you download that, you can read this QR code with the barcode scanner which comes up in that particular app itself. So once you read that, and or you can type URL manually, and the code you can enter in the app. So once you do that, it would give that this particular OTP, and then you're done. And this is the Authenticator app which I'm talking about, Azure Authenticator app. And once you click that, you would get this particular page of add account. And then once you read that particular barcode scanner, okay, this particular barcode scanner, you'll have this accounts set up for you, work account or school. Like, you can select any of the work or school account, and then you can read that barcode, and then you're done. Like, the complete uh, whenever you try to access your app, you'll get a message saying like this. It would come up with like this, like, if you're trying to access a portal, okay, Azure portal.azure.com, then it would prompt up a particular OTP or a certain pop-up, which would last for 30 seconds. And if you're responding in between them, then you're authenticated, which makes actually your life bit easy. It doesn't need to remember credentials as well. It just authenticates that you are a right user. Okay, and saying that, let's move on from all of the developer perspective of using that particular Azure Active Directory. Let's move on to something IS perspective of lot of different bit of thing, like configuration, or setting up hybrid AD architecture kind of stuff we're gonna talk about. Okay, so we basically would talk. What I would be talking here is like it's various implementation of Azure Active Directory, how they are implemented. Okay, so one thing is like one of the hybrid AD implementation of Active Directory is like you can extend your on-premise AD into Azure. Okay, so let me take you guys into one particular slide which explains you the complete AD, how actually it sits in. Okay, and then I'll just talk about that particular hybrid strategies. Okay, so what happens is, when I say about Active Directory, right? So Active Directory is, okay, I'll talk about Active Directories before moving to this. Okay, so Active Directories are nothing but what they have is this sort of architecture they have. I mean, these Active Directories have a lot of user attributes, like the one we have, you're seeing, right? You have users in this Azure Active Directory, right? The same at on-premise also, at on-premise Active Directory also, we have the same thing. We have users in it, like, this doesn't have. We'll be having users in the Active Directory machines. Okay, AD is a server again. Okay, they have users in it. They have registered devices. They have and they have forests and other stuffs. Okay, so each Active Directory would be on a part of, or it would be under a particular domain controller. Okay, so DCE is specific to which actually acquires a lot of Active Directory underneath it. Okay, so Active Directory would be, Active Directory would be single piece, but you will have multiple domain controllers across the globe. Okay, and if you are a single organization and you are occupying whole of the world, like you have existence or across the world, then in that case you need to have your identity as well spread over across the world. Okay, if you take an example of Zen3, okay, Zen3, I mean, it doesn't have an AD right now. I mean, that's a different, sad part of it. Okay, but if it exists, if it should persist, then what it need to have is like it need to have a AD in India, which can have user attributes of Zen3 India employees, and and there should be another AD, which would be sitting in somewhere in Zen3 America, and it should have Zen3 American employees there. Okay, in that particular user attribute. Okay, so those particular Active Directories, in order to have complete single sign-on kind of experience, or in cases of you want an experience where if a person from Zen3 America comes and sits in Zen3 India office, he should be able to authenticate to whatever applications which are provided by Zen3. Okay, then only you can say that, yeah, it's a complete, kind of core banking kind of organization. Okay, how actually core banking works, like even if you sit in any state, you're able to log into any application, and I mean the users are able to authenticate, right? If you're implementing that kind of thing, like if you have two different directories, but those two directories can't talk to each other until unless you have some third party person who can actually sync up the details in between whatever they have. Okay, so for that only we have something called as domain controllers. So domain controllers have, or they synchronize data in between ADs, or and the data would be stored in DCs. Okay, those user attributes can be split up, or synchronized across all the DCs over the world. Okay, so my DC can go and sit on Azure, or my DC go sit on one DC can be, if you have Active Directory, you will have a domain controller as well. Okay, you have Active Directory, you have a domain control, you will have ADFS, you will have ADDS as well. So once you have Active Directory, you will have a domain controller. So domain controller will control this all stuff. I mean the Active Directory stuff, and it would synchronize the claims or attributes or passwords, whatever you're adding in a Active Directory India to also in Active Directory America. The same thing, the domain controller there would sync up all the users or attributes or passwords which are there on there, and it would sync up on those attributes in India Active Directory. Yeah, that's possible. Okay, or what can happen is like we'll have various set of domain controllers, and these domain controllers can you can set up these domain controllers across a lot of places, so that like if a user is trying to log in via a server, okay, and he would face a domain controller, like domain controller, there are let's suppose we have two different domain controller in India and two different domain controller in of US. Okay, and there's something called as domain controller with global catalog, or we say is a domain controller, global domain controller. Okay, what it do is like if we have three multiple offices, like we have three multiple offices in Hyderabad, right? So we can have three different two, or let's take up two different locations in Hyderabad and two different locations in Central America. So our domain controller, what it do is like it would sync up all the users and the applications from the activity which you have, and it would talk with ADFS as well, and then it would sync up those users to domain controller, the user and passwords to the domain controller to the other offices as well, because you don't want that there may be a latency, like you have hosted a domain controller in somewhere in Vaishnavi enclosure, and I mean one particular location, and the other particular location guys, when they are trying to access it, they are actually getting latency, or they are very delayed sign-ins are happening. Okay, not to avoid that, you can have something called as domain controller, global domain controller, okay, which would be single to India DC. Okay, and then there would be domain controller for two different domain controller for two different offices in India, and the same implementation at US side as well. So once you do this, right, like these particular global domain controllers, actually they can talk with each other, and they can exchange the data between each other, and even the American employees, Central America employees, if they come and sit in India office, they are able to log into their services, whatever services, recruitment application or any other application which they need to sign into. Okay, so that's a complete usage of Active Directory, domain controller, and global DCs which we have. Okay, and we'll talk about this later. So that's what, like, I have on-premise Active Directory. Okay, so where I have all user objects, everything, and then I have something called as ADFS. Okay, and then I have this Azure Active Directory which is on cloud. Okay, and I'll explain you complete architecture, what this particular thing is talking about. Let's go back to slides. So when you are trying to extend your on-premise AD into Azure, okay, the basic implementation is this one. So what you're doing is, like, you are putting up your replica of Active Directory, Active Directory on cloud. Okay, and what you do is, like, you have your Active Directory with the domain controllers or DCs, okay, domain controllers here, and the domain controllers will have your user attributes, everything synced up user attributes from the Active Directory. Since you don't want to expose your Active Directory to the outside world, you actually expose domain controllers. Okay, because if someone comes and manipulate, because these domain controls are like a filtration wall before your call goes and hits to your Active Directory directly. Okay, so that's why you have, so the ADDS or domain controllers are similar type of services. So they actually do Active Directory domain services or directory services. Okay, which means that you actually make a call to this ADDS REST APIs, and that would inversely call to this inversely call this domain controllers, if they are independent domain controllers are there, to them, or it would do a query, or the ADDS do query on Active Directory directly, and it retrieves whatever data or you're trying to fetch. If you're trying to log into a certain system which is a part of corporate LAN, then you would try to give your username and password, and it would go and authenticate with respect to your Active Directory, and then it would give you a sign on. Like, it would give a successful authentication. So the same thing, if I want to take up my on-premise this particular authentication to Azure. Okay, so what I need to do is, like, whatever domain controls or how many domain controls are existing, persisting in at on-premise, I can actually sync up those domain controllers, or I can go and create a simple Windows 2012 R2 server, and then I configure ADFS or ADDS services on top of it, or I can set up it as an Active Directory as well. Once I do that, so this is an old diagram, so it has this particular cloud service thing it is showing on. Okay, so for ARM we'll have a resource group. We too don't have availability sets concept as well. We'll have two domain controllers. Okay, and these two domain controllers on Azure would be they would be part of a VNet and a subnet as well, and they would be talking with our on-premise domain controllers, or there would be synchronization happening, or it's this particular Azure DCs, which are domain controllers which we have created, is just a replica of your on-premise. So whatever user attributes which are added in here would be synced up via VPN gateway, okay, under a VPN tunnel to the DCs. Okay, so that's what, like, it makes secure as well the channel, since it's the call goes via VPN tunnel. Okay, so that's what, like, you replica your own Active Directories which are existing on premise to Azure. This is one particular implementation. The second implementation would be, like, you can go and once you set up this particular domain controllers, copying your Active Directories onto Azure as well, like, where you are actually copying up all of the things, and there may be possibility, like, you would try to like, if some user comes and they actually modify a user in the Azure Active Directory, domain controller which you have, and that below domain controller changes which are happening here should also be replicated at on-premise. Okay, so that's also possible, and this is what I talk about is um, you can actually do password synchronization with them. Okay, instead of you putting this particular replica or complete domain controller, creating a other set of domain controller on Azure, what you can do is, like, if you want to write up a password or change a password of the particular user which is existing on premise, you can do with this AD connector. Okay, so the AD connector server, what it do is, like, it would have trust between your domain controller or your Active Directory. Okay, and it would also have a trust between your Azure Active Directory. So this is a broker between Azure Active Directory and local on-premise Active Directory. Okay, so whenever users signs in, right, actually you like he signs in and he sets up his own password. Okay, that hashed password or encrypted password, actually Azure Active Directory commits onto on-premise on-premise Active Directory via AD connector. So that's the purpose of AD connector. Actually what it do is, like, it synchronizes all the users from your on-premise AD to Azure Active Directory. So whatever users are persisting here, they would persist here with very minimal, if you're adding a new user, yeah, that would minimally take a little bit of latency, and then it would persist that user here. And once you have user in the Azure Active Directory, now with the capability of your on-premise AD, it grows up, because it can now onboard application, cloud-based applications or SaaS applications as well, because it persists its users onto your Azure Active Directory. We'll discuss more upon the advantages of moving to this kind of methodology further, and if you want to read more about it, yeah, this is a link you need to follow. And this is a certain implementation, like where I'll be talking about Active Directory, AD Connector, the ADFS, and the Azure Active Directory. So ADFS or Active Directory Federation services are, the services where actually you don't want to put a replica to your Azure Active Directory, but rather what you do is, like, you don't want to use your AD connector as well to sync up your users onto your Azure Active Directory. What you want to do is, like, I'll just have my single sign on experience set up. Okay, I will be having a web application proxy which can actually interact with ADFS, Active Directory Federation Services. So what it do is that, like, Active Directory Federation Services would act as a trustee between the Active Directory and you. Okay, so whatever user you're trying to log in, if they are part of this particular on-premise Active Directory, they will be logged in via ADFS, or they would authenticated via ADFS. Okay, and you doesn't need to sync up your users to Azure Active Directory. That's the best part of ADFS, and this is a little bit more complex implementation rather than this AD connector. Okay, and this I have done for my own when I was developing my own SaaS delivery platform framework. At that time I have used this. I have set up this complete sign-on experience where I have an Azure Active Directory. Okay, I have my applications authenticated as an authenticated applications on Azure Active Directory, and I actually set up a federated authentication between, or federated trust between, Azure Active Directory and ADFS. Okay, and then without actually synchronizing the users from the Active Directory to the Azure Active Directory, I was able to authenticate each and every applications with ADFS. Yes, that's possible, because your the ADFS can trust Azure Active Directory. Okay, and ADFS can trust your on-prem ID. Okay, so it's similar to like AD Connect, but it won't synchronize your user data from here and there, but it just makes a call on behalf of you. So whenever your application comes, you show up a user to get authenticated with your own on-premise Active Directory. Okay, on-premise Active Directory, or certain times when you can define your Azure Active Directory also for authentication. Okay, that's implementation is also possible. Okay, if you want to sign in your on-premise Active Directory peoples with onto your application, so you can have a web application proxy which would be added as to the ADFS. Okay, or you can add this particular web application proxy to Active Directory, and then Azure Active Directory will have a trust between both of this. So once you have done that, when you go and sign up or try to access a web application, it would actually divert your call to federated services, ADFS. So ADFS is again kind of services like ADDS. So it would do federated authentication or federated calls or federated REST API calls on top of your calls which you make to this ADFS, and ADFS would do like a forest. I mean, it would search in a forest about your user attributes, and then from AD it would ask AD to that like, do you have any user called as user? And if you have, can you authenticate that user? He had passed on me the password. I just passed on that particular password to AD. Yes, if it authenticated, I'll get a response from ADFS, and then ADFS would give a reply URL or redirect URL to this particular user. So that's one particular sign-on experience which happens, and which happens without any user persisting this users onto your Azure Active Directory. Okay, the second type of authentication which may happen is like my SaaS application would try to which are hosted on Azure, and it would try to have their users on Azure Active Directory. Like my on-premise users are getting synchronized with the help of Azure AD Connect to the Azure Active Directory. So now these all SaaS application can actually have single sign experience with the Azure Active Directory. That's possible, which we have discussed already. So the one certain experience which you all are going through is the Office 365 experience. Is one such this particular experience, where in Zen3 whatever employees we have actually, or any other company who actually opts for Office 365, they will be they for that organization there would be domain would be created. If I created with subscribe to Office 365 for Zen3, I'll have zen3.com directory created on Azure Active Directory. So once that is done, what it would do is like it would actually try to sync up users from your on-prem to your Azure Active Directory and authenticate users inside, authenticate whatever applications for that particular users using this Azure Active Directory. So benefits of extending Azure Active Directory to your Active Directory to Azure is you will get a resiliency because you are replicating your one more DC to at another place. Okay, you have a DC at your own local. You have two DCs in your own local where you are persistent data. Think of a situation like in case of natural calamities, your DC goes down. I mean it burns out. So in that case, you have a resilience or replica or secondary DC defined on Azure. Okay, so for that kind of solutions, most of the people move on to Azure Active Directory, and you have something called as like you can authenticate Azure based services within Azure, and you doesn't need to direct your calls to on-premise, and then on-premise Active Directory authenticates those applications sort of thing. So for Azure, let that authentication sit on Azure itself. Okay, because my authentication Azure is very scalable, but your on-premise it's not scalable to the extent where, like your Azure is. If you have an application on your Azure, like a bigger e-commerce application, and there would be sudden burst of registration, user registration. I say that my to my users saying that if you say like this Diwali, if you like, if I'm an Amazon user, and if by this Diwali or by this particular date, if you subscribe to Amazon Prime account, okay, you will get this particular services free and a lot of stuff. So in that case, a lot of burst of identities would happen. I mean, a lot of people would try to authenticate your service. Okay, and you, so if that authentication is going and sitting at your on-premise, then you have a trouble time, dude. Because the amount of traffic or amount of registration which would increase sporadically would I mean it won't be depend upon you don't have certain figures on it. So your on-premise can't bear that, because your on-premise can't scale up with the traffic growing each seconds. Okay, but Azure can do that. So that's why, like, if you have Azure based services and you want to authenticate them, better keep the authentication at Azure. So in that cases also people move to Azure Active Directory. And if you want to, take your Active Directory, like Zen3 is Zen3 India have an Active Directory into local, but it don't have certain peoples to configure that particular Active Directory in Zen3 America. Then what it can do is, like, you can actually spin up an Active Directory. You can create a Windows Server 2012 R2 data center and configure an Active Directory domain controller and create a VNet and then push it into US location, put in West US somewhere, and well, people from there, like the users which would be created, would be created, or they had their identities in US Active Directory, Azure Active Directory itself. You doesn't need to bother about their identities pushing every time periodically via worker process into Indian Active Directory. Okay, so that's possible. And you can do a lot of directory synchronization stuff as well. If you want to synchronize, if you want to have a replica of your DCs in multiple locations, more than 6 locations, you can have this directory synchronization setup. That would help you out. So these are the benefits of Active Directory or moving your AD to Azure. And one such implementation of Active Directory which would be talking about is inter-site connectivity. So when I say about inter-site connectivity, so this is an example of inter-site connectivity. So inter-site connectivity can be, I persist my one particular Active Directory details in India, and I have another site B called as which I would post in Zen3 America. Okay, but I want to sync up all of the users under them. So I need to have the inter-site connectivity so that I can do this. So I can have a domain controller in between them, or global DC. Okay, the global DC can talk with the local DCs which we have in India and in US, and then we have Active Directory behind them. Okay, so that's what is inter-site connectivity. And we have Active Directory sites. The Active Directory sites are, and these are only like Active Directory in India site is different, and site B, it's an American site, the Zen3 America has different Active Directory. So those are Active Directory sites. And read-only domain controls also you can have. So most of the cases, what you can do is, like, in case you feel trouble that your domain controller which you have. So these are domain controllers. Okay, you can consider them. These are domain controllers, and this is a global DC which you have, which synchronizes users in between them. So these domain controllers can be read-only domain controllers. You can make them, because the possibility of these particular DCs getting hacked are more. Because I don't have, like, if I have a DC or global DC, I'll have more eye on global DC and more, sort of security or auditing on it. But if I have a DC in local, and like, if any new onboarded person admin comes, and he can actually sometimes screw up the DC which you have in your existing architecture. Okay, in order to, or it may be possible that the laptop via which he's RDP into this particular this particular domain controller, local domain controller, like, his particular laptop is not set up with anti-malware or firewall applications, and the possibility of the hacker to corrupt your this particular DCs are more. So if you make this particular DC as read only, then even the hacker actually tries to attempt to hack this particular DC, he actually can't enter to your Active Directory, because this is only read only domain controller. Okay, so you can't enter into your AD and corrupt your Active Directory, and then it would synchronize that particular corrupt data to all across the sites whatever you have. So you made them this local DC as a read only. Okay, so that's what is read-only domain controllers. And FSM roles and global catalog placement, it's actually with respect to global domain controller we have. Go through it, because I feel that it's pretty depth at this particular, or for this particular session. If you are interested, you can go and read about them, and we can back up and restore as well. Yeah. if like we can take up regular backups of your Active Directory, you can take backups of your domain controller as well into another dummy domain controller, another dummy Active Directory. That's also possible using directory synchronizations, each and every stuffs. And this is also anti-DS placement. Also, you can learn, and forest trust is also you can go and learn. So the synchronization with Azure AD connector, how it works is like our sync services are like the AD connector, which I talked about here, right? The AD connector service, which actually have a trust between on-prem AD and Azure Active Directory. We are talking about that particular service only. So that particular the AD connector has something called a sync service. It has ADFS and it has health monitors as well. Okay, so sync service, what it do is like it would it would have its a directory sync, okay, service, and it has Azure AD sync, and it has FIM plus Azure AD connector. Okay, these are the three different services which are part of the sync services. And you can see that this is ADFS, which is actually persisting on AD Connect. And you know that ADFS actually reads data from AD. Okay, so we have it's persisting in ADFS. Okay, and once if it's if this service is there in Azure AD Connect, which means that so we have ADFS which is provided by on-prem. Okay, we don't have ADFS kind of service which is there to do read kind of services with read kind of services on AD. Okay, because AD trust ADFS, right? And if some service like ADFS is there or it's a part of AD connector connect server, then actually it trusts this particular AD Connect as well. Okay, so that's why we have this particular ADFS component as well. Okay, and directory sync would sync up users from AD on-prem AD to your Azure AD. Azure AD sync would do that same. It would sync up resources from your Azure AD to your on-prem AD. Okay, so these are two-way sync services which would be happening, and we have Azure AD Connector which would be doing or managing these all stuff, the sync services stuff. So Azure AD Connect you'd be using for this particular, like if you want to bring up users onto Azure Active Directory and authentication them via O365 or Intune or any other SaaS services which we have on Azure. And this is the same thing. We have something else, health monitoring as well, right? So with Azure AD connectors, like what are the features which we have with Azure AD connector is like it have a password set self-service password. You can do that, and you can actually synchronize your password if you have your user attributes in your on-prem and you are changing some password at your on-prem, and that would reflect onto your Azure AD as well. If you're doing it Azure AD, that would happen on-prem as well. So it's two-way binding which would happen, and multi-forest support it has. You can put up filterings on top of whatever queries are coming from Azure AD to on-premise AD as well. You have something called as, if you're writing back your passwords from your Azure Active Directory to on-prem AD, that would be called as write back policies. You can define them. And you have your Azure AD COnnect Health as well, health monitor. So I'll show what are or how this health monitors works. So for installing and configuring the Azure AD Connect, right, it's pretty easy. You can go with express installation or customized settings, or like so if you don't want to if you're okay with just password synchronization, and but like you don't want to put any custom features or customized sign-in options, you can go with express installation. Otherwise, if you have multiple forests in your Active Directory, in on-prem Active Directory, and same you need to persist on Azure Active Directory, yes, you should go with customized settings. So let me show how that particular Azure AD connector page would look, or from where actually I can install my Azure AD connector, because it's time taking. I have done already this the synchronization stuff. it's just a lot of configuration. You will have a lot of articles written on top of it about how to set up Azure AD connector, like how to set up your synchronization process with your on-prem AD and Azure Active Directory using AD Connect. So if you go to Azure Active Directory, go to any of the Azure Active Directory. I have so So this is a place where you can actually you can improve your user sign-in experience with the users at your Contoso.com. Okay, Contoso can be your own organization or Zenthry.com as well. Okay, you can add that domain. Okay, or you can integrate with your local directory as well. How you can do is like you can download this particular AD Azure AD Connect. It's again a software. Okay, and then you actually need to take this software, copy into your Azure Active Directory, local on-prem Active Directory, okay, or onto a domain controller, whatever you have, okay, or you can put this in a ADFS as well, okay, but prescribed you can put onto your other machine other than your Active Directory machine. So once you put that and install this particular Azure AD Connect, it would run your Connect and it would act as a AD Connect server. I mean, it would be like this particular AD Connect server, okay. And if you're placing somewhere in DCs, yeah, that would be part of AD Connect on it. It would be part of that particular DC services itself. Okay. So once you do that, like you need to do it, and there are a lot of steps you can go through. You can Google it. You will find a lot of videos as well on top of it, of it. And once you do that, you will have your complete synchronization setup in, and your users would be signed up in Azure Active Directory as well. So once you set up these all ADDS and ADFS services, or if you are trying to use certain ADFS services, or you are on board your AD Active Directory to domain controller to your on-premise domain controller, I mean on-premise domain controller to your Azure Active inside Azure, then you'll have certain or once you configure this Azure Active Directory Connect, right? So once you have complete implementation of this complete thing pipeline, so you'll have in your portal, like it would be showing up this particular dashboards where it will show that how your ADFS services are doing, that they are healthy or not, how your AD Connect is doing, it's healthy, and how your ADDS services are there. ADS services are there, whether it's healthy or unhealthy. Because sometimes what happens is synchronization may fail with any of these kind of services, any of this one particular service is getting failed. If ADDS is not working, yeah, that can also be a reason. Or if ADFS is not working, then my queries or application authentication would get failed. Okay, so that's the thing. So these are all taken care by the Azure AD Connect Health.